Welcome to Fitness Casual, fitness and nutrition tips for busy people. I'm your host, Andrew Hayes, and with me is the amazing Kat Best.
Hello, hello.
Kat, hot start. We're talking about seasonal depression today, SAD, which is maybe the best acronym for any condition ever. Do you have a particular seasonal activity that you haven't tried that you'd like to try? Winter, summer?
I think the one thing that I would love to get into, but it seems virtually impossible, would be archery. But that would be the one thing. I think it seems really fun, very therapeutic. So yeah, that would be a summer sport.
I think it depends. Well, I mean, you can hunt with a compound
Yes.
bow in the winter. We can call up, we have two former clients who hunt in Montana
right.
with bows. We can call them up. They can show us the ropes.
I would love
you
to go hunting.
Would you hunt? Okay.
I
Yeah,
would.
I would.
I totally would, for sure.
I would too. And honestly, I don't really care, but if the animal ethical people want to jump down our throat, it's like hunting is very regulated and controls
Yeah.
the population. So it doesn't make you a bad person. It's, it's as old as human existence to hunt animals as long as we control it. So, okay, that's very exciting. I did archery as a kid and like Boy Scouts. So it is fun. I think it's really cool. I was never very good at it, but we should go. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, they're listening to us out there in Montana. Would love an invite, guys, to do some hunting. I have to say, I've never done a lot of water sports. I didn't grow up near a lake. My family never had boats. So I've never done water skiing or anything like that. Like wakeboarding. Those look really fun. I would like to do that. I'm not sure I'd be good at them, but I do snowboard and used to skateboard, so maybe. So I would like to try
You'd be
that.
good. Yeah, you
Yeah?
would be good at it. I would be
You've done it?
terrible. Horrible.
Or no?
No. But my brother is very good at skateboarding and snowboarding, and he
Okay.
picked up like wakeboarding immediately this summer. Because I think he just has those skills. But I've never done any water sports either, but I don't really want to.
Yeah, it's a lot of core strength, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then you
Well,
go
that's cool.
flying. When you let go of the thing, they got to come get you in the boat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I am a little afraid of jet skis. I've been on them, but you read the statistics on those, like they're not great for you.
Not good for your brain.
Skydiving is actually safer than riding a jet ski,
I've done
which I
that
have done.
twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fun, right?
It was fun.
We should do a client retreat where we all go skydiving.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not sure how many of our clients would do that, but okay. Well, that is good. I like to start off on a positive note since we're going to talk about depression today, seasonal depression in particular. So I think everyone's familiar, and I believe everyone generally experienced some form of this. I was in Copenhagen, Denmark this summer, and those countries in general have very limited sunlight in the winter, and it's a huge problem. And even though it's kind of ironic because Denmark is like one of those happiest countries in the world studies that they do, but they also have some of the highest rates of antidepressant prescription. So it is a very real thing. So if you feel some level of depression in the winter or in the low light, you are heard. But I want to start it off with something really important, which is just like anxiety. One of my favorite phrases is anxiety is a symptom, not a disease. And, our opinion, generally speaking, is there's a lot of similarities with seasonal depression. Obviously, if you are depressed, you should seek medical help. But a lot of these symptoms can be mitigated with lifestyle choices. You are not doomed forever to feel the way you feel today just because that's how you feel. You can make choices in your life to improve that. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So before we go into specific habits, wanted to talk a little bit about what we do know about SAD. And there is still very much a gray area, which is one of the reasons why it's kind of an epidemic. But there is a lot of research tying it back to melatonin. If you didn't listen to our hormone episode from last week, melatonin is one hormone that is naturally increased at night to help you fall asleep. A lot of people know it because they think of it as the pill that you can get anywhere you want at Walgreens, which I have a lot of beef with. It is a hormone that is readily available, which is kind of crazy. But your body does really sync with the sun. And so circadian rhythm is incredibly strong. If you've ever been on vacation, and you've gotten on an airplane, you've experienced just how wildly strong the circadian rhythm is. Again, back to my Denmark trip, we traveled, I want to say it was 8 hours or 10 hours in one day, time zones. And I was going to bed at 3 in the morning every single night. And like I am, if you guys know me, like I'm in bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock, like without fail. I'm not cool. I'm not at the bar till 2 in the morning. Sorry. Like that's just when I go to sleep and it works. And then I went to Denmark and I was like, oh my God, I cannot fall asleep because that's a circadian rhythm. And so it really takes roughly 1 hour per day to readjust to jet lag. So by the end of my trip, I was on the time zone. And this is some of the similar things that you experience in the winter with lower sunlight. A lot of us are not outside enough anyway because we're sitting at a desk, we're sitting in our car, we're sitting inside watching TV. And then you just add that to the fact that there just is less sunlight and it is colder and you experience these symptoms. So, Kat, have you had a lot of experience with seasonal depression in your life?
I definitely used to say I had SAD. And I think I did, and I don't anymore. But the time change did just happen like 2 days ago. And I immediately noticed, like yesterday at 4 o'clock when it was getting dark, I'm just like, what the hell? Like, I was like sad. I like was just because it was dark, and it really did impact me. In a way, I think it's kind of a good thing because it makes you feel like to wrap up work earlier. If it's darker earlier in the summer, I could easily like do stuff until like 8 p.m. when it's light out. But I definitely would say I get seasonal blues. Maybe not depression anymore, but I definitely feel a shift. And I used to be really bothered and impacted by it, where now I kind of embrace the shift. I actually feel like going into winter, more of like a primal thing of like getting your body ready for this change. And I think it also starts with just having the awareness of going like, okay, It's getting dark, it's getting cold. I love warmth and I love the sunshine. So I have to then pick up the slack elsewhere to make sure I stay happy and healthy and don't have like that much anxiety, because it definitely can take over without you really realizing it. And all of a sudden it's February and you're like, I'm super depressed. What's going on?
Yep. And that is all of the research that we've done in preparation for this is melatonin seems to play a part, but it's not that simple. And it is very complicated, and there are lots of different factors at play. And to your point, I do think there is just a general maybe lack of excitement when the cold weather comes around, when the darkness comes around. And like everything else in fitness and nutrition, it becomes a flywheel. And you get a little depressed, so you don't move as much. And maybe you make less healthy choices, or you start to drink a little more. And that leads to, more hormonal imbalances, more depression, worse sleep, which, and so forth. And so it becomes this vicious cycle that we don't seem to break out of until the sun comes out again in the spring. So we will talk about some tips today to help with that, both specific to like actual nutrient deficiencies and hormone deficiencies, as well as just general tips that we have found. So I can start. I have lived all over the country, so not all over the world, but I've lived in many different climates, and it's really interesting, and traveled a lot for work. And it's really interesting to see how different people handle different seasons. So one of my favorite examples is Minneapolis, or Minnesota in general. Shout out to Minnesota if you've ever been. Some of the most active people I've ever met in my life, and I think not even debatable the worst weather in the country, or right up there, like -20, snowing all the time. It's so bad that Minneapolis built an indoor walkway throughout the whole city. Like you can get almost anywhere in the city inside the Sky Mall, which is super cool. Yeah, it is, because that's how much the weather sucks. But if you've ever met someone from there, they love cross-country skiing, they snowmobile, they have all these hobbies because that's their life, and they take advantage of it. And I'm really impressed by that. And Colorado is very similar. I've only been here 6 months, but everybody skis. Everybody. And it's really cool to see even people who don't downhill ski will cross-country ski or snowshoe or just something to get outside in the winter, because it is inevitable. And when I moved here, I was like, man, I'm not really looking forward to the winter. It's starting to get cold. And everyone's response was the same. They're like, the winter's the best. Like we do this and we do that. And I do think it's really important to try to embrace that. I know it's easier said than done. But there is a lot to be excited about. And that is what we saw in Denmark too, with Hygge, is I believe Hygge.
Oh, I
think is
love
how
that.
you pronounce
Yes.
it.
Yes.
That's their
I
whole
go
method of like,
huggy.
yeah, Hygge. It's kind of how they embrace it's kind of like the art of being cozy. It's a bit more complicated than that, which I learned when I was there. But it's, again, their way of being like, listen, we got 6 months of cold
Love
and
it.
dark, and we're going to make it fun. We're going to light a fire and read a book and have candles. And it's a really big thing over there, really big. They use it as an adjective to describe things. It's really amazing to see. And so a lot of it is just choices you make. And so if you have the season coming up, which I think almost everyone does, unless you're in LA, find out something fun you can do. I'm sure you have a friend who has figured out what they're doing in the winter. And especially if you have kids, like, don't just throw them in the basement to watch TV for the next 6 months. Like, find some really cool activities. Snowshoeing is not expensive if you have snow. Maybe there's an indoor hobby you can take up, like rock climbing. Maybe there's indoor archery.
Right.
There's a lot you can do in the winter to embrace that. So just from a lifestyle perspective, find the joy in your life in the winter. Anything to add to that, Kat?
No, I love that. And I love that you brought up being cozy, because I feel like I am A+ at being cozy. It's like maybe the one thing I do like about it being cold. I love candles. I love blankets. I love fuzzy things. I love warm drinks. And I think that does help a lot, because I do find joy in being able to do those things. But yeah, an indoor hobby I think is really important. And also that's what gyms can be good for, because you can go be active inside. I think living in New York, it's very depressing in the winter. It sucks. There's not even anything good to go do outside. It's pretty brutal. And I do think a lot of New Yorkers get very irritable and antsy in the winter, and that's why, like, in April, that first day it's warm, everyone's outside, like, no one's working, and it's like really exciting when it gets warm again. But yeah, you have to find other things, and just know that it's only temporary. But if you choose to live somewhere where it does get cold and it is winter and it gets dark, then you have to be ready for it. You cannot, like, act like you're surprised each year when this rolls around. Got to prepare yourself.
That's right. I did almost 10 years in San Francisco. I've lived in LA as a kid, and there aren't really seasons. There are a little bit, enough that you're putting on a coat versus not, but it's kind of the same. You can play tennis year round. You can hike year round. You can go to the beach, kind of, although it's cold. And I do think that as much as that is nice and I enjoyed it, it also does build that habit of, oh, I hate cold and I hate winter and I hate fall. And there's actually a lot to be excited about when the seasons change. Not to mention kind of that philosophical belief of you should have seasons in your life. You appreciate summer more when you are in the winter, and vice versa. So obviously, if you live in LA, this maybe doesn't apply to you quite as much, but you should enjoy the seasons. It's part of life to have seasons. And that is why we'll get into some habits now on how specifically you can do that. So I will start with melatonin, which is, like I mentioned, loosely tied to SAD, but not the only factor. In terms of habits, I do not recommend melatonin as a supplement, generally speaking. Obviously, talk to your doctor. Your doctor's probably going to give you more specific pill, like at Lunesta or something. I think it's a huge problem that there's melatonin available at every pharmacy on the planet. One, they're not regulated at all, so we don't even know what the quantity is. And two, it's just to take a hormone that loosely without any oversight or any knowledge of how it works is really dangerous. And if you know anything about sleep, you know that melatonin is what makes you feel sleepy. It's why people talk about the blue light versus red light, which Kat will cover in a second. One of the things that I have personally noticed in the winter, and I've read in my many studies of sleep, is that you do sleep more in the winter. And my favorite thing that most people don't know is called the bullseye. And the bullseye is about half an hour before your bedtime, usually, if you have a bedtime. If you don't, you should get one. About half an hour before your bedtime, you start to feel incredibly sleepy. Like if you ever watch TV at night and you can't get off the couch, that's called the bullseye. That is when your circadian rhythm and the rest of your body are kind of aligned on, okay, it's time for bed. And if you miss that bullseye, the reverse happens. You get this natural energy spike. It's often called the second wind. And that will keep you up sometimes for hours. And so in the winter, a lot of times, we're not feeling super thrilled with the next morning. We know it's going to be cold. We got to rush out the door, maybe scrape ice off our car, and we stay up later than we should. And that is keeping you awake even longer, which is going to mess up your melatonin and your cortisol balance. And then in the morning, you're probably not going outside because it's cold. You're not getting enough sunlight. So your body is now completely thrown off its biological clock. And so this is how that pattern starts of melatonin and cortisol not being aligned. So it's really important on a simple level. Habit number one is just go to bed at a normal hour. And if you feel tired, if you feel that bullseye, go to bed early because you're going to feel great the next day. You're going to embrace the day. You're going to find something to be excited about instead of dreading it and having one more glass of wine or watching one more episode of Friends or whatever it is you're watching. Anything to add to that? The importance of sleep for seasonal depression.
I love sleep, so I think it is really important. And I think you have to capitalize, like if it is dark out and you are getting physically tired, you need to get into bed. It's very easy for you to get tired and then you can override that and kind of get yourself revved back up. And that is like, watching one more episode of TV or having like a snack that you don't need when you're tired. Like those things can amp you back up. So I think you have to capitalize on the moment. Like if I'm on the couch watching TV every single night, when I start to get sleepy, I'm up and I go to bed. I don't even really want to fall asleep on the couch and then get up. I try to like get right in that sweet spot. And I think that is really important. But I think just depression aside, mental health, like you need to be sleeping enough. It works wonders for even anxiety and, all that other stuff.
Yep. So true. Having kids just reinforces everything that everybody knows about sleep. But when you have a tired kid, especially a toddler, everything goes out the window. They're so irritable. They're so cranky. They don't eat. It's just like the whole day is messed up. And I think we often forget that because we're so used to being sleep deprived. And so in the winter, it really is important to listen to your body even more so maybe than summer. All right. So habit number 2, similar boat, is blue light, red light, which I already mentioned a little bit. But the biggest source of blue light is this thing called the sun, which we're all familiar with. And blue light really helps regulate your hormones. It's why it's really important to get outside during the day, every day, especially in the morning, to remind your body that it's morning. Set your biological clock, spike your cortisol, give you energy. And it's harder to do in the winter, partly because there's less sunlight and partly because we're less likely to go outside. And so you want to make sure you're not messing with the blue light, red light balance in your personal choices as well. We've all heard that screen time is bad at bedtime. I have blue light glasses. People make fun of me for it, or blue light blocking glasses. I don't care that people make fun of me for it. I throw them on every night, like around 7 or 8 p.m. I take my contacts out, put the blue light glasses on. It feels really good. And it helps because then I can watch TV or leave the lights on a little bit. And another one is to just lower the lights in your house. A lot of people just flick on the super bright kitchen light and do the dishes until 9 p.m. And your brain is just like, what time is it? And that's really hard when it's been dark out since 6 p.m. and your house is really bright until 9 p.m. This is, again, throwing off your schedule. And then you can also buy additional products like the red light that Kat has.
Yeah. So I got this red light in 2017. So I think I was on like the early adopter of the red light. And I did get it for seasonal depression and just reducing inflammation. But the seasonal depression was a big interest point for me. And also I bought this when I wasn't really working on people with nutrition. I just didn't quite understand, but I liked the idea of it. I'm kind of into light biohacking, so I was really into the idea. But I still use my red light, and I pull it out in the winter, so I'm about to pull it out now that it's getting darker, and I use it for about 20 minutes per day. I have one, it just kind of is like the size, maybe like a foot tall, so I put it on my face, but you kind of have to localize it on body parts if you have a specific area you're trying to focus. It also helps a lot with skin, ladies, so it really helps cellular turnover. But I was looking up some studies earlier because I was just curious, like, I know it helps me, it feels really good to me, but like, what does the actual research say? And there was one really interesting study that did say that red light therapy was as effective as an antidepressant for treating seasonal affective disorder. And that is just sitting in front of, you could be on your laptop, you could be working, you could do whatever, you just have a light shining on you. And like that does so much for you, which can be quite amazing. I'm sure there's like some placebo effect because you also feel the warmth of the red light. It feels almost like going in a sauna, but it's not hot, but you get this like warm buzz after. But the red light stimulates your mitochondria. And if we go back to 7th grade science, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. We all know that. So if the light like penetrates your mitochondria, you are like improving your health at the cellular level. And that can do a lot for metabolism, energy levels, inflammation, and depression is a big one. And it does help regulate melatonin. How, I'm not exactly sure, but I know there is a correlation between light and melatonin. However, I don't exactly know. It seems like both red light and blue light are good.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
whatever light you like.
Yeah, right time of the day is really important as well. That's like a lot of people wear blue light glasses during the day, and you don't need to. I don't know that it's that harmful, but you don't need to because the sun is blue light and it's everywhere. So, it's not doing anything to your eyes to look at a computer screen because it's the same as being outside.
How impactful is the I don't know the answer to this question. You might. When you turn on your screen and it goes like in yellow mode.
Oh yeah, the true tone.
How good is that compared to blue light blocking glasses?
Yeah, I haven't read a lot of studies on it, so I will tell you that I don't know. But I'm actually interested on your opinion on this too, Kat. I am actually not as anti screen time at night as a lot of other coaches might be. And Kat, I think you agree with me, but the reason is it is a de-stressor. We've talked a lot about cortisol already. We have a lot of clients who are lawyers and they work till 10 p.m. and then they're like, oh, I need to get in bed and turn the lights off. And it's like, they're not going to fall asleep, right? And so watching an episode, or even if it's scrolling on the phone a little bit, I'm not opposed to that as long as you are remembering that your brain should not be seeing a ton of blue light. And so you need to wear the glasses, you need to dim the screen, you need to turn on the true tone. I really like my Kindle for that reason because it's a very low light in the background of a black and white screen. It's not like super in your face. So I will often read on a Kindle at night. I don't know. You agree with that assessment generally?
Yes, and the only people I say to really limit screen time before bed are people who clearly have sleep issues. If you're sleeping fine and you're responsibly using your phone and TV and you're getting enough sleep, I think it's okay. And I would put myself in that camp of I prioritize my sleep, but I also love scrolling on my phone. I like watching TV. I have my screens at night, but I'm also not using them really during the day. So that's my little moment to catch up on stuff. But then I start to get sleepy and I go right to bed. I shut things down when I start to get sleepy. I don't overpower it and keep scrolling. I will say TikTok, I would never get sleepy. That is the one that you can keep going and going and going.
It's a rabbit hole.
So that one at night is dangerous. I think no TikTok at night. But it's just so because you get that hit of the scrolling. But yeah, I think screens, are part of our lives. It's only going to get worse. So you just have to get better at being responsible. And I do think Kindles are great. Sometimes in bed, I do have a Kindle, but sometimes I'll read on my phone, but I just turn it really, really dark, and reading puts me right out. I'm asleep in 3 pages. I can't read anything.
Yep. I'm the same. I read a book by Ariana Huffington, who at one point was a sleep guru. I don't know if she still is. And she was like, if you fall asleep reading my book, I consider that a personal win. And I do tell people that a lot. If you have trouble staying up at night, the book is putting you to sleep, then keep doing that. That's great. Find another time to read too. Okay, good. And we are going to do another episode specifically on sleep, honestly, maybe multiple. So just to recap so far, melatonin, keeping your hormones regulated is really important in the winter. You do that with your exposure to sunlight. You do that with your sleep habits. You try not to supplement, in particular in the winter, with melatonin because it's already probably out of whack. But there is another reason to get sunlight, and that is vitamin D. And there is lots of supplementation of vitamin D, maybe one of the most supplemented vitamins out there. If you're not familiar, the major source of vitamin D is sunlight. You can also get it from food, which we'll talk about, some ways to supplement. I have rarely seen someone's blood work personally that wasn't vitamin D deficient, at least in the winter. And I have like made it a point to myself to be at the minimum in the winter, and I've gotten pretty close. Like I'm at the very low end of my age group, but I'm still at the very low end in the winter. It's just really hard. There was a study about getting enough exposure, sun exposure in the winter. If you are in Miami at noon in the summer, you can get your recommended dose of sunlight for vitamin D in about 3 minutes, which is crazy. If you are in Boston in the winter, this is in the study, it would take more like 25 minutes, which still isn't bad at noon. However, you also have like less than 5% of your body exposed. And so it's not being absorbed through your skin. So the estimate is really more like 2 hours. And that's hard. So yes, could you, in the middle of winter, be outside for 2 hours every single day around noon? Sure. I think maybe some Minnesotans do that, but I think most people that's not realistic. It is the best option, but it's probably not going to work. So vitamin D supplementation is something your doctor would probably prescribe to you. If you haven't done blood work, you should. And then we also have some ways to get it from food, which Kat will talk about.
Yeah, so unfortunately, vitamin D is hard to come by with food. There are a few things, and it's usually the flesh of fatty fish like trout, salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines, and then fish liver oils. So those are the best sources of vitamin D. And I know most people listening, you're not crushing the trout every day. Even myself, I really feel like I lack on the seafood department. But when it comes to vitamin D, it's really those foods. And then there's like little things like mushrooms. I think eggs have some, but it's primarily animal-based products. And I read an interesting fact when looking into this topic, and it was that vegetarians and alcoholics are the highest percentage of having this seasonal depression, which I thought was really interesting because vegetarians are lacking a lot of key nutrients like probably vitamin D and then B12. And then alcoholics, because they drink so much, their bodies are so malnourished and from all of the drinking that it depletes a lot of their nutrients. So it's like, if you're having nutrient deficiency in general, you are more likely to also have low vitamin D and be more depressed. So I think that's one really speaks to your diet as a whole. And it's not just eating foods rich in vitamin D. Like Andrew said, it mostly comes from the sun. So I don't even think relying on food is even like that good of a strategy. I do think supplements are really handy in this situation. One thing when you are looking for a supplement is it should have vitamin K. I think this is a really interesting fun fact that a lot of people don't know about, and when anyone tells you take a vitamin D supplement and you just go to CVS and buy like the cheapest one on the shelf, that's not necessarily the best one either. And this is where like things can get a little complicated, but you do want your vitamin D supplement to have vitamin K because vitamin K ensures that the calcium goes into your bones and not your arteries, because vitamin D helps a lot with your body's like calcium regulation. So that's one thing very important to make sure it's a vitamin D and K. And then I think as far as the amount of the supplement, about 1,000 IUs is good. Maybe 600. If you're really deficient, that's where you could do like 3,000, 5,000. I know if people get like a doctor prescribed one, that could be like 10,000 IUs. It could be really, really high. And I would also recommend getting one that's like a liquid. It can be a little more bioavailable in your body than like a pill. So like a liquid, vitamin D is fat soluble. So you need to have fats present for it to be digested and absorbed properly. So that's why a lot of the food sources of vitamin D are fatty fish, because the fat does help there. But then, have mushrooms, but you're really not moving the needle all that much. And then one interesting thing I also found with people who have seasonal depression is that they tend to consume significantly larger dinners and more evening snacks during weekdays and weekends, and they are more likely to binge eat or just eat a lot of food or have emotional eating. So that really speaks to and that's similar, I would say, for probably most people who have regular depression, not all that different. But I think something about having really big dinners and not prioritizing like breakfast and lunch and having like nutrient dense meals there will make anyone likely to overeat at dinner, but especially someone who is suffering with depression, because your appetite can be off. So I think starting the day with like a good nutrient dense breakfast, a lot of protein, like we're always talking about protein, but I think that is really important just to set yourself up for success. And it's kind of like the chicken or the egg with depression. It's like, well, I'm sad, so I don't want to work out, but if I work out, like, you know, things like that. So I think you just have to override your body's natural instincts, which might be to, you know, not eat or, you know, choose something easy or high carb, high sugar, and that's just not what you want to be doing, and you have to be conscious of that. So I think when it comes to eating, like protein, fats, minimally processed foods, like all the stuff we typically talk about, but it is really important just for inflammation, because if you're more inflamed, you're more likely to probably have mental issues anyway, or just feel like crap. And, you know, if your body feels like crap, you're probably not going to exercise, which can like keep the cycle going and going. And then I think, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was
Water.
gonna wrap up, but it sounds like you have one more thing to say. So
I'd
please
say
do.
one more, water. I think water, really important. I just can't stress how much water impacts everything. But if you are drinking enough water, you're more likely to feel better. And I know if you're depressed, you kind of can totally neglect your core basic needs. So I think just drink enough water, that's always important. And then if anything, just walk, get some regular exercise, go on walks. Like even when it's really cold, I still walk my dog twice a day for 1 hour. We're out there, unless it's way too cold, that's dangerous for him. But if we can do it together, like I still do it. And I would love to not when it's cold, but I just commit to what I was doing anyway. I just keep it going. And that's a choice. That's like a choice I make. And I think a lot of these habits are just choices that you have to be aware of and make for your future self to prevent like some of that depression stuff just seeping in slowly over time. Because it could just be, you know, eating a little bit better quality food, drinking water, and getting one walk in. That makes all the difference.
Yep. It is a symptom, not a disease, to have seasonal depression. So it is hard, but you can take control. To recap, it is absolutely chicken or the egg, flywheel, interconnected, however you want to phrase it. So big picture, find some joy in the season change if you can. If you need to get a new hobby, do it. I love golf, which I've been very loud and proud about this year, and I belong to a golf simulator. And apparently in the winter they're incredibly popular, and you can go and they have food and drinks, and you can play any course in the world indoors. So there's a curling place near me. I've never curled before, but like, you know, the Olympic sport of curling, there's a lot to do in the winter. You just might have to be a little more creative. So find something fun for you and the whole family if you have them. And then on a tactical level, in terms of habits, continue to regulate your sleep. You might be more tired in the winter and you should lean into that. Go to bed at the right time. Don't power through it, especially if you're not looking forward to the morning. Make smart choices in terms of regulating your blue, your red light, what time you're eating, how much you're drinking. And then vitamin D in particular is something to be conscious of if you haven't done blood work in a long time. It is one of the few things the doctors will always test you for. And then they'll have a pretty good idea of what to prescribe for you. They will probably tell you to cut it down in the spring and summer and taper off and then go back onto it in the winter. All of these things can help. And as always, small steps make a big difference. So if you feel overwhelmed, pick one place to start, make some individual small choices there, and then continue to build over time, because it is a lot and it might take some time, but you can do it. And personally, I love the winter, so I'm excited. All right. Well, thanks everyone. If you need more help with any of the things we talked about today, you can find me on Instagram at Andrew Hayes Life. You can find Kat at Kat Best Wellness, and we'll see you for the next one.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.